The following program, President Grant, His Reflections, is a presentation of the Civil War Broadcasting Network. It is one of that series of programs wherein President Grant shares his reflections of persons, places, or events in his presidency or his life after the presidency. It is available on the free YouTube channel General Grant by himself or Dr. E.C. Fields, and on Facebook under President Grant by himself or Kurt Fields as General Ulysses S. Grant, and other social media. Permission to copy and distribute is granted and indeed encouraged. Remember, you are the future of our past. And now President Grant reflects on the peripheral people in his life. I'm President Ulysses S. Grant, and you join me here in the library as I am going to reflect on one of the significant peripheral people in my life. I should like to reflect this night, though, on John Aaron Rawlins. He was my chief of staff throughout the war and served by my side virtually the entire war, after the war, and into my presidency before his too early death, only 5 months into the presidency. I met John when I was in Galena the year that I lived there, from May of 60 to April of 61. And he was an attorney for the Grant Leather Company. And we got to know each other, not well, but know each other. He was a staunch Douglas Democrat. I was a Whig, Republican. But I respected the way he thought and his articulate expression. He was a man of deep conviction and fiery rhetoric. He was a joy to watch and listen to speak, and a very, very intelligent man. He was born on February the 13th of 1831 and in Galena, Illinois, or thereabouts. He was one of 8 children. He had 6 brothers, 1 sister, and his father was rumored to be an alcoholic. And John played a strong, large role in bringing up his brothers and his sister. In 1849, when John was about 17, perhaps 18 years old, his father succumbed to the allure of the gold fields, and he went out to California to try his luck with gold, and he was there for 3 years and finally came back, slinking back, as John would describe it, and was not successful. And John had to really take up the cudgel when his father was gone, to the extent of denying his own education. And he had been working on his education. He had a pretty good education. As he progressed between working in the family coal business, if you would want to call it that, he would cut wood, dig the pits, burn wood to turn it into charcoal, and sell it. That's how they made their income. He came to be known as the Coal Boy of Galena. He actually went for about a year and a half to the Rock River Seminary, so such were his convictions, but he finally ran out of money and couldn't go back to the seminary. He, as a result of his father's heavy drinking, became a profound anti-alcohol person. He thought the demon rum was the source of all problems for anyone who drank, and carried that conviction all his life, with good reason, from what he witnessed and experienced with his own father's treatment and neglect of the family. he was selling coal and had indeed on one particular occasion in 52, he had got an ox cart with a brace of oxen, loaded with coal, and drove it into town to the railway station to sell it to the railroad. And the oxen nearly dropped dead there at the railroad. And he thought he had had quite enough of the coal business. And even though the oxen looked like they were near death, he sold oxen, cart, coal, and all for $250. And that's what he used to finance his reading of the law. He began to read with a local attorney, and within a year, 1854, he passed the bar and became an attorney in Galena. Did very well indeed, won many of his cases, and in fact was elected the city attorney for Galena, Illinois in 1857. He had married Emily Smith in 1856. They had 3 children rather quickly, but she died of tuberculosis in 61. In fact, right after he left to join me in the war, which leads me to talk about his involvement with Galena and the war and myself. When war was declared and we found out about it in April the 16th of 61, we had a meeting at the town hall there in Galena, and John made a rafter lifting speech. Now was a profound Douglas Democrat, to the extent that he'd even been a delegate to the Democratic Convention in 60 that even though it split, the Northern Party, or part of the party, nominated Douglas. That's how staunch a Douglas Democrat he was, and felt to be anti-war, but he made a stem winder that night on the 16th and came out strongly, clearly for the Union, and said, "We have naught to do now but appeal to the God of war for a decision on whether or not this country will stay together." He was an articulate man. So when he prevailed on me to train the Joe Davis Guards, which later became the 45th Illinois, uh, and I agreed to train them. I declined a captaincy with them because I've been a regular captain or a captain in the regular army, and to take a captain volunteer would have been a step backward. I thought there was more to me or for me in the war than that. But I did train them and took them into Springfield, Illinois, where they were ultimately mustered in. I became a colonel of the 21st Illinois, dated June 17th of 61, and on August the 7th of 61, I was appointed and accepted a commission as Brigadier General of Volunteers. Then I was eligible for a staff. I felt that my staff should include some people from Galena, and I reached back and asked one of those folks that I asked was John Rawlins to come be my chief of staff, adjutant general. And even though he had no military experience, his wife was on her deathbed virtually, and moreover, he had already accepted a commission volunteer colonel with another regiment. But when I appealed to him, and he accepted, because he later told me he was more interested in me and more optimistic about what I would be able to do in the war. So he accepted the captaincy rank with me. Now, ultimately, he rose captain, major, lieutenant colonel, colonel, brigadier general of volunteers, major general of volunteers, and by the end of the war, dated April the 9th of 65, for his service, Congress awarded him the rank of brigadier general, regular army. I needed Rawlins because I have often said all I know to do with a piece of paper is put it in my pocket until I can give it to someone who does know what to do with it. Rawlins was the man who knew what to do with pieces of paper. He made my headquarters run smoothly. Uh, Even though it might be raucous and loud, he was an extremely profane man and given to some loud fits of temper when he was displeased about something, but he still ran a tight ship. He was an able office manager and staff leader. I highly valued him. Well, when the war was over, he stayed with me. And when I became president, I named him Secretary of War. Now, he had, I should say, remarried in '63 to Mary Emma Hurlburt, and she met Mary Emma Hurlburt in actually in Vicksburg when she was one of the northern ladies who came down south and was there and gave him a bad time, but ultimately they were able to get together, fell in love, and they married in '63, in December, I believe, of '63, and they had 3 children. Uh, when the war was over and we worked together, he was still an able assistant, as I expected him to be. And when I was elected president, I rewarded him with the position of Secretary of War. By this time, in March of '69, he was desperately ill with tuberculosis, as he had always been afraid he would catch tuberculosis. And I appointed him despite his illness, out of an honor to him for his service to our country and to me on my staff. And he died on September the 6th of 1869. And I lost one of the best friends I ever had, one of the best administrators anyone ever had, and my Secretary of War. I shall miss him greatly, always. That is my reflection on my good friend, longtime Adjutant General Chief of Staff, John Aaron Rawlins. And for the moment, I must conclude my remarks in this reflection on the peripheral people in my life. I hope you see fit to join me another time when I have a peripheral reflection on others who have worked with me, and should look forward to seeing you at those times. For the moment, I've said quite enough, and I bid you a fond adieu.